Hello everyone and welcome to another HOI4 modding lesson from the Iron Workshop. In this lesson we're going to be learning how to create a new ideology in HOI4. Now a lot of you have asked for this lesson and it's about time that I deliver. So with that said, let's get to it. Now we have a few steps in creating our new ideology. First of all, we'll be creating our mod file, obviously. Second, we'll be creating our folders and files. Then we will be editing the ideology file. After that, we'll need to assign a leader to our new ideology so that he shows up. After that, we'll be creating the ideology flags. Now, I won't be changing these flags. They will just remain the vanilla flags of the country that we will be choosing. But obviously, if you have your own flags, you can just rename them and they will be used for that ideology. Next, we'll be creating the ideology icon. And last but not least, we'll be creating the localization using something to help us called ITF, which I will talk about when we get to that step. Okay, so our first step is to create our new mod file. So I'll open the HOI4 launcher. And here I'll go to mods, mod tools, create mod. Now I'm going to call my ideology SpongeBobism, just to keep up with the last lesson. And the folder is going to be the same, SpongeBobism. I'm going to select one of these tags. It doesn't really matter for the purpose of this lesson. And click on create mod. Excellent. Okay, so we're done with that. The next step is to create our folders and files structure. Now I will just be copying files at this point. I will not be editing them in any way. We'll be using these files once we get to the later stages of this lesson. So let's open our HOI4 folder, mod folder. In here you will have the SpongeBobism folder already created. And let's open the vanilla HOI4 folder as well. And we'll start creating our folders and files. So the first folder that we will need is the common folder. And inside the common folder, there's a folder called ideologies. So I'm going to create that one as well. And I'll just copy the ideologies file into my mod. Excellent. The next files that I'm going to get are the history files for Australia, since I want to apply my new ideology of SpongeBobism to Australia. So I'll create the history folder. And inside of that, I'll create the countries folder. And I'll just copy the Australia file from here into my mod. Excellent. And we'll be editing this file later. The next folder that we will be dealing with is the GFX folder. So let's create that. And this is going to be about all the graphical aspects of our new ideology. So inside of this folder, first I will need to create flags for my ideology. Now, even if you don't want to have unique flags for your ideology, you will still need to create some flags that are associated with that ideology, because if you don't, then that confuses the game, it creates errors. So you need to have those flags, otherwise the country will have a black flag or it will default to the default flag, and we don't really want that. So let's go to flags. And in here, I'll just copy the Australia flags. Now I just need 3 flags, one large flag, medium flag, and small flag. So let's find the Australian flags. It doesn't really matter which ideology you pick, since we will be renaming these files anyway. So that's our large flag. Now I'll create the medium and small folders, where we will put our smaller flags. And from here, I'm also going to take the Australian flags. Okay, now I do have a bit of a problem here, since this folder is supposed to be named flags, not GFX. So make sure you fix that in case you made the error as well. Alright, so the next folder that we will need from here is the interface folder. So I will create that one. And inside the interface folder, we have another folder called ideologies. So I'm going to recreate that one as well. And I'm just going to copy one of these files that has group attached to it. So for example, democratic group. I'm going to put it in my ideologies folder. Great. The next folder that we need is the interface folder. So I will create that one. And inside this folder, I'm going to create a new file, a new text file. I'm going to call it SpongeBobIsn.gfx. Now make sure that you're changing the file extension and not just the file name. To make sure of that, just go to View and make sure that file name extensions is turned on. In this case, as you can see, it wasn't. So the extension of the file is not really GFX, it's .txt. And that is not good. That will not make the ideology icon show up. So once you have that turned on, make sure that it's GFX and just confirm. Okay, so that is how you name this file correctly. And we will be editing this file in a bit. Excellent. So there are a couple more folders that we need to deal with. So the next one is the localization folder. So let's create that one. From the localization folder, we will need two files. First one is parties. So let's find our party file. And copy it over to our localization folder. The next file that we need is the countries file. So let's find that. And copy it over to our mod. All right, so these are all the files and the folders that we will need for our new ideology. That's quite a bit, but ideologies are actually a bit more complex than they seem. So there are quite a bit of files involved. So we can close the vanilla folder. We won't be needing it anymore. And we can now move to our next step, editing the ideologies file. All right, now let's create the syntax or the code for our new ideologies. So I'm going to go to common ideologies. Now I've just noticed that I have an error here in the name of the folder. So I'm going to fix that. Make sure that your folders are named properly or things will not work. This is something that can naturally happen when you're copying a lot of files and folders. So let's just fix it so it has the correct name. And let's open our ideologies file. So this is the file where all the ideologies are stored. And what we're going to do is to copy an existing entry and just duplicate it and change its name so that it fits our ideology. Now, in this case, I'm going to take the democratic ideology, but you will notice that each ideology has this AI type of behavior. And it's usually best to pick an ideology which is closer to the type of ideology that you're creating. So if you're creating an aggressive ideology, any countries that need to be aggressive who use this ideology, they better have the AI fascist option in here, right? So if we look at the fascist entry, you see that it says AI fascist. So that might be a better choice for you, but for the purpose of this lesson, we're just going to duplicate the democratic entry. And I'm just going to paste it here just above the democratic and change its name to SpongeBobIsn. Okay, so this is our new ideology, and we also need to give it a type. This is what will be assigning the ministers or the country leaders who are using this ideology. They will be using its types. So I'm just going to remove these so there are no duplicates. And in here, I'm going to create some kind of type. So let's call it SpongeBob type. Doesn't really matter. Obviously, you can be more creative when you're creating your ideology. Now, color will represent that ideology. For example, when you're looking at the ideologies map mode, and this will determine the color that it will have. So you can play around with it. You can assign it a new color. And obviously you can play around with all of these things, change some modifiers, change some rules. I'm not going to do that right now since that is not really that important. That's up to you to play around with. Let's just save this file at this point. So now we're done with editing our ideologies file. Let's move on to creating our ideology leader. Okay, now if you want your ideology to have a unique leader and for him to show up, you will need to go to History, Countries, open the country that you want to have the leader in, and just assign him the type that we've created in the ideologies file. So let's go ahead and do Australia as an example. So I'm going to go over here to the Australia file. And I'm going to copy an existing entry for a country leader. I'm going to put him here at the bottom, and we'll just call him SpongeBob leader. Okay. And here in the ideology, I'm going to give him the SpongeBobism type. And we'll save this file. So now Australia has a minister to use with the SpongeBobism ideology. Excellent. So now let's move on to the next step, which is creating our ideology flags. Now, if you remember previously, we copied some flags files. So now we will just need to change their name to fit our new ideology. So to be accurate, not to make any spelling mistakes, I'm going to copy the name from here and paste it to these files. Now make sure to leave the 3 letters at the beginning, since this is the country tag that lets the game know that this is, for example, a flag for Australia when it's using the SpongeBobism ideology. So we'll be renaming this one. And now we have our flags. Now I will not be changing these flags since, again, that is not the purpose of this lesson, but obviously you can put your own flags, you can edit the flags, you can do whatever you want with them and to have unique flags for your ideology. Okay, now when it comes to creating your ideology flags, the first problem that a lot of modders encounter is that there are many flags and that you need to rename all of these flags to use your new ideology. And with the amount of flags that we have in Hearthstone 4, that's pretty much impossible. So what you basically need is a tool to do all that renaming in batch, right? To rename all of those files at once. And luckily there is a tool like that. Now, I don't know what the other modders use, but this is the tool that I use. I do want to make it very clear that I did not create this tool, so I don't take any responsibility for it, how it works, if it causes any damage. But this is the tool that I use in my work, and you are welcome to use it as well. Now, I will have a link in the description to download this tool. Unfortunately, I don't know the official website of this tool, and I'm not sure that it's supported anymore, but you can still download it from the link I'll have below. If the link is broken, please let me know in the comments and I will make sure to fix it. But I don't have option to monitor it constantly and know if it's broken or not. So if it's broken, let me know and I will fix it so that you can use it as well. Okay, so let's see how can we use this tool to create the flags. Now, the reason that we need all countries to have flags for these ideologies is because it's a requirement of the game. And if you don't have that, the game will generate errors, okay? So it's very important to have that. So what we're going to do is the following. We're going to open our SpongeBobism GFX flags folder. And we are going to open the vanilla HOI4 flags folder. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take only certain flags that I need, and I'm going to copy them. Now, since my ideology is closer to the democratic ideology, I will be using the democratic flags. Obviously, you can use the fascist flags, and if you need to change them for your ideology for a certain country, you can do that manually. But for all other countries, they will have the same flags. Obviously, this program will not change the look of the flags, it will only change their name. Okay, so what we need to do here is to isolate the flags that we need. So I'm going to search for _democratic so that it only gives me the flags that are used by democratic nations, okay, that are used for the democratic ideology. So once it finds them, we will copy these flags. Now here you will encounter another problem, because if I just copy these flags as they are, they do not distribute evenly to the various folders, to small, medium, and the large one. It will just copy them as is, and you will need to sort them out manually. This is another problem, but there is a solution. So there is a tool that I talked about in my tool introduction lesson, which is called XnConvert, and we're going to be using it now. If you don't have this tool, I will have a link to that in the description, or you can watch that lesson and you can download this tool. So we're going to open XnConvert, and now after filtering all the democratic flags, let's just make sure that there is nothing weird going on here. We're going to select them, and I'm going to drag them here. Now, as you can see, we have about 652 of them. That's quite a lot, but it's okay. It's a big game. Okay, so now once we have them in here, I want to output these flags into their folders. So I'm going to go to output. In here, I'm going to put a new folder. Make sure that folder is selected and give it a name. For example, I will call it new flags. Here in the file name, just keep it as is. Make sure that keep folder structure is selected. This is very important. And in here, in the format, we're also going to change it to as original. Okay, so once we've done that, you can click on convert, and it will start converting the flags, but it's not really converting, it's just copying them over with the original file structure. Okay, so as you can see, we now have all the democratic flags put together, and they're distributed in their folders. Awesome. So the next step is to open the rename program, which again I will have a link to in the description. And when you use it the first time, it can be a bit confusing, but just follow these steps and everything will be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these files. You can do that by holding Control and pressing the A key on your keyboard. Now I'm going to grab all of these files in here, and when this pop-up comes up, just select all files. Now the next step is to tell the program what is it exactly that we want to change. So what we want to change is to change the democratic syntax, the democratic name of the flag, to SpongeBobism in our case. So in here, in filter by, I'm going to type democratic. And in here in this section, there's something called replace all by. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to change this to SpongeBobism. Okay. And once we've done that, you can click on rename files. And now you see that all the democratic flags have changed to SpongeBobism. So now all these countries have their relevant flags. So now we're just going to take these files over and copy them in here. Now obviously I will keep the Australian flags as they are, since they are supposed to be unique specifically for Australia. Okay, so that is it. Now please note that due to the way that Paradox names their flags, there might be some weird things going on, like this one, for example, ARA Unified SpongeBobism. These are things which you can't really cover. You can't really cover all the cases, but this goes for most of the cases, and this will solve you a lot of errors. You might just have to go and make a few small adjustments, but in the big picture, this problem is solved. Okay, so now that we have our flags, let's move on. So we are done with the flags. Now let's create the ideology icon. To do that, we'll need to go into our interface folder, open the SpongeBobism.gfx file, and now we're going to do something a bit different. We are going to copy an existing entry from the base game. The reason that I'm doing it this way is that I want to reduce my reliance on the game files when they change, so that I don't have to edit them and I have my own unique files for my mod, which are not affected by changes done from Paradox. So let's go to the Hearts of Iron IV vanilla folder interface. And in here, I'm just going to open any GFX file. It doesn't really matter which one. For example, let's open achievements here and make sure that it's the GFX file and not the GUI file. Okay, so let's open this one. And in here, I'm just going to copy a few things. First of all, this one, sprite types. I'm going to put it in here. And I'm going to copy this syntax as well. And I will add a closing bracket here at the end so that the sprite types is closed and the game doesn't really get confused about it. And I'm going to indent it with the tab key. Okay, so what this file does, it tells the game where to locate the file for our new ideology, right? So we have the graphical file, the file itself that contains the graphics, and this is the reference file which tells it where to look for that file, and it gives it its name. Okay, so what we're going to do here is the following. So first of all, we're going to give it a name, and the name does have to be unique so that the game knows that this is a file representing an ideology group. Okay, so just do the following. We're going to leave the GFX. Next, we're going to remove this and just type the following: ideology underscore SpongeBobism, or the name of your ideology, underscore group. So now the game knows to look for the ideology group SpongeBobism here. Okay, you have to keep the GFX ideology intact and then add the group at the end. Otherwise the game gets confused, because this is how it recognizes these icon files, and we'll be just changing this file a bit just to make sure that it shows up. And this is the location for the file. So let's locate our file in our mod. We'll go to GFX, interface, ideologies, and here we have something called democratic group, but I obviously don't want it to be democratic. We need to change it to SpongeBobism. And now we'll be just copying the location of this file. So it's GFX, interface, ideologies, right? So I'm going to put it in here. And then the name of our file, which is SpongeBobism group.dds. Okay, that is it. Now we have the game knowing where to locate the icon for our ideology. And now let's just change the file a bit so that it looks a bit different and we know that the game is actually loading it. So I'm going to open this file in paint.net. If you don't have paint.net, just look in the description of this video and you will have a download link there. So I'm going to grab this file and I'm just going to give it some color. Okay, now let's save the file. Make sure in here to select this option. Okay, and now our file is saved. So we now also have an icon for our new ideology. So we're almost there. It's almost over. Okay, now let's move on to our next step, which is creating the localization. And although this is only the localization, it can get a little bit complex, but I have a tool that will help you to make it much more easy. So to create our localization, we're going to need to edit the files in the localization folder. And we have a couple of them. So first of all, we're going to edit the parties L English flag. So let's just open it in here. And in here, we just have to add the entry for our ideology and for the ideology type. So let's just edit here at the beginning. So I'm just going to put this one in here like that. And just do it exactly as it appears for these other entries. So it's going to be SpongeBobism. Now we also need something called a noun. So I'm going to copy the noun syntax. And I'm just going to call it the same thing, but obviously you can be much more creative when you're creating these entries. And we also have the description. So let's add that as well. SpongeBobism is awesome. Okay. That is basically all we need, these three. So now when the game is showing this ideology, it will use these localization entries. And now we're getting to a bit more difficult part. Now this part involves giving our country a name. So if we start the game now with the mod, what will happen is that if Australia has the SpongeBobism ideology, it will not have a name. The reason for that is because each country has a certain name attached to it when it's using a certain ideology. So since Australia, which is using SpongeBobism, doesn't have a name, then that will be empty. Now the difficult part here is that you need to create entries for all the countries to use your new ideology. Now this is a bit insane because, as you can see, every country has quite a few of these things in here. And creating all of these, or let's just copying the entries for Germany and then for England and Soviet Union, it's quite an impossible task. So I have a special tool which I've created to help you with that. Now what you will need to do is to go to the Steam Workshop with the link that I have in the description of this video and download the ITF mod, which is the ideology template file. Once you have downloaded that, in your mod folder you will find a folder called IWITF, and all you need to do is to open this file. And in here you already have entries for all the countries in the vanilla Hearts of Iron game, and the only thing that you need to do is to insert the syntax or the name of your ideology and then just copy it. So let's see exactly what this means. So once you open the ideology template file, you see here that you have something called your ideology, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this. I'm going to press Ctrl+F on my keyboard. And here I'm going to go to replace. And I'm going to replace your ideology with SpongeBobism. Now let's take a look at these entries, right? These are the entries for all the countries. And I'm going to click replace all. So now all of these countries have the entries for SpongeBobism. So it doesn't matter if only Australia or some other country has SpongeBobism, they will have their entries. Now, another thing that you can choose to change in here is the definition. This is usually when you have the something country, right? So for example, if SpongeBobism is a monarchy, I can change these to be the Kingdom of Andalusia. But in this case, we're going to change it to the Bikini Kingdom of, in this case, it will be Australia. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this ideology prefix, press Ctrl F, go to replace, and in here I'm going to put the new name that I want to appear. So we're going to change it to Bikini Kingdom and press replace all. Okay, so now all of these countries which are using SpongeBobism will be called the Bikini Kingdoms. Now obviously you can play around with it, you can change it, you can use this file any way you want, but after you're done, what you need to do is to select all of this except for the hashtags and just go to the end of the file, copy, open your countries file and just paste it right here below the L English. So now all the countries that are using SpongeBobism as an ideology will have their names show up, and that solves this quite complicated problem. Okay, so there's only one more thing to do before we test our new ideology in the game. We still need to assign it to Australia. We did create the minister for it, but we did not assign the ideology. So let's go to SpongeBobism, history, countries, Australia. And in here, I'm going to search for the ideology line. See here, there's a line that says set politics, ruling party. So we will need to change this to SpongeBobism. And we will actually give it some popularity as well, but you don't have to do that. That's just some flavor. And we'll give it 90. Now make sure that all the ideologies have 100% together, otherwise your game may actually crash, okay? So we'll give it another 5 and another 5, and we'll save the file. And now let's go into the game and see if it works. Make sure to select the mode before you start the game. So manage mod. It might not appear here, but if you don't see it here, just go to manage mods and just enable it in here. Done. Play. Okay, so here we go. We have Australia with the SpongeBobism ideology, with that sexy looking icon and with the color that we didn't change, but if you change it, obviously the color here will look different. And we also have all the localization that we put in. So that is it. Now, obviously, as you add new ideologies, this thing gets messed up a little bit. And in the future, when we talk about interface modding, I will explain how you can overcome this problem. This is basically all you need to know about creating ideologies. It is a bit complex. Probably more than you may have thought, since it seems to be a very simple thing in the game. If you encounter any issues, just let me know in the comments and I will try to help you as much as I can. Do try to do things again, because as you have seen throughout this video, sometimes things can go wrong, since this is something that can be a bit complex when you're doing it for the first time. But after the first time, it will probably be much easier and you will be doing this much faster and much more efficiently. So that is it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next lesson on the Iron Workshop. Stay safe. Bye bye. Hey guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Check out these other videos on the Iron Workshop that you might enjoy as well. Please consider supporting the Iron Workshop on Patreon. This will allow the channel to grow and become even better. Thank you.